Right, so we're going to take a move away from the act just for a small little tutorial. I think we need to break it up like this because it gets a bit intense going through the act, and we can't do the whole act for this year. It gets a bit much, just reading through laws and trying to understand them. So we're going to try and intersperse it with things that are more practical, different types of topics, so that we're covering more ground as we go. We're going to start on a idea of family preservation systems, so FPS systems, FPS, which is family preservation systems, which is something that the South African Social Work Service is very into. It's very on trend, but it is actually quite a worldwide phenomenon. But before we can start with family preservation, we need to sort of look at different types of families and what family dynamics are. Because as a social worker, you would be invited in to these families at different points. All right. So you could be invited into a family that is merging, right? A family that's coming together and each partner has their own children. That could be where you're involved. You could be running support groups to help children understand divorce. You could be helping partners understand divorce. You could be involved with maintenance. You could be involved with behavioral issues. So there's many entry points for a social worker within the different family systems. And we're going to start off with a blended family, right? So just off the top, Sophia, can you tell us what's a blended family? All right, I think Sophia's on mute. Jackie, can you tell us what is a blended family?
Sorry.
Oh, there you are, Sophia. What's a blended family?
An unconventional group of people that you don't see in the storybooks.
Okay, so that's most families nowadays. A blended family, yes, it is part of that, right? So it's a break away from the nucleus family, right? Right.
Yeah.
So in a very traditional, very antiquated sense, the family would be mommy and daddy and two little children, right? And a dog and a cat, and that would be the family. All right. Mommy and daddy would get married. They would then have the first child. They would wait a year or two and then have the second child, and everybody's perfectly spaced, and the family unit works stunningly. This is, however, not the reality anymore. And blended families refers specifically to families that are a mix of one or two families, right? So think about remarriage in the sense, or cohabitation, because we don't necessarily define a family by marriage, all right? So you have your own children, your husband has their own children, right? You guys have now fallen into it and you're going to do it. And the result of that is a blended family or a step family in another sense. There's very unique challenges, right, that face step families, right? This includes creating new relationships between the children, creating relationships between the step family and the different children, right? As well as the extended families and their understanding of things such as discipline within the household, religious studies within the household, um, how routines work. All of this sort of becomes a challenge or can become a challenge, right? So just before we go into it further, can you mention some specific challenges that you think can arise from a blended family, Jackie?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, I don't know what's going on with my mic. Different styles of discipline from one household to another household when you bring the two households together would be a problem.
Okay.
Favoritism, where you kind of favor your biological children over your spouse's children or children who have come in from elsewhere. Different if you guys, if the kind of style of education or whatever for the children has been different, to try and bring those together, to try and get siblings to get on, who are not necessarily well spaced. You might have two who are exactly the same age, and that can complicate things, or that kind of thing.
All right, perfect. So those are some of the challenges. So in order to understand what a dysfunctional blended family is, we sort of need to start aside with what we've observed as successful blended families, right? And again, when I say marriage, it's union, rather. I want you to think of it rather as union, as many blended families are made up of cohabitating partners rather than, through the religious service of marriage, or the state service of marriage. Okay, so number one, we find that for a blended family to work, right, there has to be time made for the couple, right, the core movers, to spend time together, right? And usually we find that they make space during lunch, coffee, during school times. They actually set aside specific time to spend with each other. The second biggest indicator is a unified parenting approach, right? So children, a lot like wild animals, look for a gap in the fence, right? And if you as two households are coming together, there's a lot of interpersonal tension already. And the most successful of those are when the parents present a united approach, a unified approach, which means we sort out what our rules are, what we're going to be away from the children, and then we back each other up first. Okay? Because if that doesn't happen, children very often will try and play off parents against each other. It is a survival tool. But a blended family also works on establishing trust. So they recognize that children feel uncertain about a new family. Remember, as adults and as people being through relationships, we understand what the concept of a family is, right? But very often children do not fully understand the depth, the meaning, and the implications, the unspoken terms of what it means to be family, right? Trust is established through getting to know the stepchildren, right? And not taking things personally, right? Especially when children reach their adolescence, when they're starting to define themselves, they're now also starting to define themselves within a blended family, within a different family structure, right? So there can be a lack of enthusiasm, there can be a lot of anger, lots of rage, and we try not to take these things very personally to make it work. Another trait we see of successful families is that they spend one-on-one time, right? That is vitally important because you're dispersing attention across a variety of people with a variety of backgrounds, all with their own idea of what a union is. And finally, they acknowledge the children's loss, right? They acknowledge that a family has been lost in this process and that there's a grieving that happens. If we zoom in a bit closer, right, we see that there are safe boundaries that are created within a blended family for it to be successful, right? Number one, discipline by biology seems to be the best worked form of discipline. This is just according to research, right? So the biological parent remains primarily responsible for discipline, but discipline, however, is discussed in a unified front. There's a list of family rules, and these rules are discussed and they're posted in a prominent place. They can be seen, they can be adhered by everyone, and that removes the idea of unfairness. Then we also spend time learning what the rules and boundaries are in the different homes so that we can try and be as consistent as possible. Because different rules in different spaces with different things that we call the same thing. So when I'm at your house, we're still a family, but when I'm dealing with these people, we're still a family, but now the rules are different, does cause some confusion. Successful families rely very much on communication, family meetings, they resolve issues together, and there's a team identity that is built, right? Initially, the step parent becomes a friend, a person to go to, and finally takes on those more parenting roles. Okay. So, Akona, I want to hear you. Can you unmute yourself? Okay, we keep going. Right. We want to keep all parents involved, right? So there's a few easy ways we do this. Number one, we maintain easy access to both biological parents when possible, right? This is the family preservation coming in now. We let the children know that you and your ex or the ex-partners will continue to love them and be there for them throughout their lives, because they are dealing with a divorce. You might have dealt with it and come through it, but they're dealing with a separation, and this is a continuous theme, especially in the formative years. Very important, we do not explain that there's a replacement mom or dad or that there's a new mom or dad, right? We don't use that terminology because there's an emotional link there that we're going up against and that will cause a lot of issues later. We rather introduce as a person to help and support them and as part of the team. All right. Let's break a bit. Shakira, I haven't heard you yet. You with us? Okay, I see Sophia's just come back in again, so I'm assuming they're reconnecting. Jackie, have you had a chance to work with a blended family?
I come from a blended family.
Oh, okay. Tell me about the challenges in your blended family. If you feel comfortable. I mean, you don't have to delve into your family politics.
There was jealousy between step parents and actual parents. So mother gets jealous of stepmother, father gets jealous of stepfather.
Okay.
That was a awkward situation. As children, we were just expected to get on with each other. We were expected to just somehow make friends and figure it out. The step siblings had, their father had died, so our father became their father, whereas we had, another mother, and so there was complexity of multiple people in the picture. They were permanently with my father. We would come in and out because we'd spend some time with them, some time with the other parents, so there wasn't a whole lot of consistency. Because we lived in different homes, there were different sets of rules in the different homes. So even, never mind in the one family that was blended with a mother and or father and a stepmother and step siblings and stuff like that, where there were mixed rules, but also because you have access to both biological parents, the two biological parents in the two households didn't necessarily have the same rules or the same ways of doing things.
Okay. So if you could go back in time and advise the two adults coming together to form this blended family, what advice would you give them?
I would say primarily you never allow your personal conflict to impact the children, so that needs to happen privately. And then to the children, you present a united front. If without that, there's split loyalties amongst the children. So you if you enjoy spending time with your father, you feel guilty towards your mother, and vice versa. Both of them are telling you what's so terrible about the other one. So that needs to be completely private. That should not be shared with the children. Rather than a united front, and things need to be decided together. I think basic rules should be decided that are the same in both households.
Okay.
I think a little more grace, or if I would advise them, I would create family activities where there could potentially be bonding time or connection time between the siblings without just this expectation of friendship. I think one-on-one time with each of the kids would have been important as well. And recognizing that it was pretty crap, and being able to allow the kids to express that as an emotion in a safe place without that being shut down.
Okay. Good. Sophia,
Can I come?
Yes, of course, Shakir.
I'm having the most delicious chicken curry, butter chicken, and mince curry. If you guys want some.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
What I found, because we live in a blended family as well, is all these rules are beautiful, right? Communicate often, openly, and so on. But a lot of times, you're going to just have to allow the children to go through their processes and motions and emotions and all of those things before they actually find their path to the family. Just as an example from personal, my daughter only started coming to our house this year, since 2016. And post that, we gave her whatever problems and traumas she had to go through. And we just sat back. And after she found herself, she started coming again. And so the other one also followed as well. So what I learned from that is you can force or try and enforce all the rules and all the regulations and this is my house and tough love and all of that. They will only change and see what is important when they're ready for it. I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Shakir, what do you think is the biggest challenge in a blended family?
The different mindsets.
Okay, what's the biggest thing that's helped your blended family?
Say again?
What's the most positive thing that has helped your blended family? So what has your blended family done that you think has been the most impactful in a positive way?
To understand that those mindsets do exist. And it's okay if you think south and we think north. How can we meet each other halfway?
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. All right, Akona, I see you did manage to unmute yourself. Do you want to try again? Hey, there we are.
Hi, Nick.
Welcome. I'm so glad I get to hear your voice.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Akona,
Okay.
tell me, have you experienced a blended family? Do you know of somebody in a step family?
Yes, I do have experience on it. Even though it was just a kid from my father's girlfriend. They were not married, but the kid have to come and stay with us. So we became that family. He have to come from his mother to come and stay with us. So now we have to accept this new member of the family. So we have to stay together.
Yeah, and what were the challenges there? What did you discover was the difficult things to navigate?
So having to look at my mom struggling, disciplining him, the most problem was the girlfriend trying to rule my mother how to treat her child. So that was the case almost every time when there is an argument. It's because this other woman is seeing how my mom is disciplining us or all of us. So she had a problem with that. No, this is not how I want my child to grow. This is not what I want for my child. To the other day when she had a problem because her child was calling my mom. So she was like, no, she's not your mom. You can just call her auntie or kind of. So my father was like, no, he cannot call my wife auntie because she's not an auntie here. It's a mother of this house. So it is up to you whether you want to take your child, stay with him, or you just accept how we do things in our house. So it's been that problem between that girlfriend and my mother. So it was just that challenge only.
Yeah, so very often, and that's exactly it. And there's two things that Connor mentioned here that I want to pick up on. But number one, blended families are much more common than we like to think they are. All right. They're not always necessarily two people that were once married or one spouse and come through. Sometimes it is that there's a new child entering the home from a previous relationship where the family is still involved, right? It does take many different forms and shapes. And the conflict can also arise, and very often does arise, when there are multiple adults involved within the disciplinary system of the child, right? Where the child is now almost forced to pick a side between them. So thanks, Akona. That was a great contribution. Right.
You're
So one thing that works very well with blended families, this is according to, I think, the Pearson research they're on, is to communicate openly and effectively and often, all right? So the ground rules that we set, especially you as a social worker going into the blended family system to look at what the family constellation is like, what the family system is like, you set a few ground rules. And the first ground rule is that we listen respectfully to one another. We address conflict positively, which means we are having a fight, but the goal of the fight is not to prove right, wrong, who's better, who's worse. The goal of the fight is so that we can become stronger and we can find a way to work with each other. Right? We establish a non-judgmental atmosphere, and this is where people can express their feelings, especially children, without feeling like they're disappointing an adult by expressing their feelings. Doing things together and activities together is a form of communication also. It's a form of building those communicative bonds, usually on walks, in games and sports. People start communicating, they start talking to each other, and that's a lot of bonding that can happen there. And a very basic rule, which if I were the social worker in these cases, I would start off with is we spot the good, all right? So instead of seeing all the bad, we start spotting the good, all right? What has been good today? What praise can I give today? Yes, there's things to be fixed and there will always be things to be fixed, but within this unit, if we get used to spotting the good, spotting the positive and praising the positive, right, we grow much faster together. Right. The onus is on the parents to make sure that all the children in that home, in the house, feel like that is their home, right? The advice is usually to move to a new space rather than moving into someone's space, right? Because of the power dynamics. That's not always a practical solution, right? That is, of course, the best case scenario. What is very important is that each child and each person actually within the blended family has their own spot, right? Even if it's not their own room, right? It's their own spot that they have, right? This is a space that you can go to where you just want to be by yourself whilst dealing with all these changes and thereafter also. A successful family needs to set up traditions, routines, and rituals. So a traditional family would set these up as they go, and every relationship, every union brings about traditions, routines, and rituals that keep it going. All right. But in a blended family, it's very important that a concerted effort be made to what are our traditions? So what do we do? Right. So number one is if there are children in this union, the children lead in terms of what is important for them. All right. So if child A really loves Easter and child B really loves Christmas, we go to celebrate both equally. All right. We negotiate when it comes to things such as, and it's small things, such as when do you open up your Christmas gifts? Do you open them on Christmas night or Christmas morning? Right. These are all traditions and routines that we need to negotiate on, and we do that together. And then, importantly, we create new rituals. Maybe pizza on Friday nights. Maybe we watch the game together. Maybe there's a new special celebration we do for birthdays. It's new ways that we do things together that grow our identity. A lot of this work within blended families is developing the new identity. So when a couple gets together, right? The first thing, or one of the things that naturally arises, is that they start developing their couple's identity. Who are we? Right? What do we do? What is our routine? What is our ritual? What is our tradition? Then there is the children that come into that, and they would fall into those traditions, and new traditions would be formed. But now when you bring in two families together, we have to really make a concerted effort at forming new traditions that are unique. Not we're going to do like they do and do this. We've now looked at what makes for positive. And remember, this is all very theoretical, largely some practical, but largely it's just understanding the theory within it, because each family and each blended relationship will have its own dynamics that you'll have to explore. Right. But what's important is that we have a good theoretical basis of sort of what does work before we start doing what can we apply. So let's look at how children adjust based on age, right? And I think the rest of the presentation will mostly be on that because that's the biggest aspect where you would be involved in. All right. So number one, if children are under the age of 5, they're in preschool or 5 to 7, all right? Number one, they believe in magic, all right? So a divorce isn't final in their minds. However, they are very well aware of the impact of the divorce, the pain of the divorce. And because they're suffering that cannot be processed at that young age, they usually blame themselves and they carry that guilt of the divorce. But preschool children adjust very easily, or usually quite easier than others, into having two homes. Right? So what's the most important thing to remember there is that the view of time is very different, right? When you're a young child, because you've only lived so little of your life that saying a week, it's a huge chunk of your life. When you get to 50, you've had thousands and thousands of weeks. A week flies right by, right? So when we say things like, you'll go to daddy's house next week, it may seem like a very long time to do it. And what usually helps there is visual cues, countdowns, and things like that to help them understand and put it into their framework of time. As if you're entering into a blended family where the children are between 6 and 10, right? They adjust relatively well. Well, they could because they thrive in cohesive family relationships. Right? So if it's cohesive, they will enter it quite easily. They can be more accepting of new adults in their lives. But this is where the idea of competition arises. And they may feel that they need to compete with other children to get the parents' attentions, right? Attention, sorry, and that they can get it through their behavior. They also have daily needs for attention that have to be met. Then we get to adolescence, right? And this is the age between 10 and 14. And children at this age have the most difficult time adjusting to a step family, right? They need more time to bond. They struggle to accept a new disciplinarian in their lives. They're also developing their own personality, their own identity, and they do not necessarily demonstrate their feelings openly, right? So they could hide away a lot of things. They could be quite withdrawn. They could be unmotivated, but still they do need love, support, attention, discipline. And with a focus on love, support, attention, discipline, you usually get them to come out of that cage and out of that scared space or space of maladjustment as such. Right, let me take a breather here. Shakir, are you with us?
Yes.
Okay, so at what age do children adjust most easily to a blended family?
The first category, 0
Which
to
is
6 years.
0 to 6 years old, all right?
Yeah.
What is important? No, where's Sophia? Sophia, are you with us?
Yeah.
Okay. What is important to remember about children between 0 and 6 when it comes to adjusting to two families?
When it comes to adjusting to two families.
What seems to be the biggest issue with children in this age when it comes to daddy's house and mommy's house? Ye- Time. Talk to us about time. What is the perception
they
of
don't
time?
have they don't have a concept of time. It feels like forever. If they just the waiting, they can't deal with the waiting.
Okay, perfect. Jackie, what's the most difficult age and why for children to adjust to a family?
Sort of school going age. So I think it was 6 to 10 or just older than that.
10 to 14.
Because 10 to 14, thank you. So it's the 10 to 14. Because they are busy figuring out their own identity. They're not as accepting it as to other people stepping into their space. And they may hide a lot of their emotions that they're feeling.
Okay, Akona? Akona, are you with us? Okay, we'll circle back to you. So that's 10 to 14. From 15 and above, all right, children start feeling awkward about their parents' sexuality. They don't want to think about their parents as being sexual creatures. They're also developing their own sexuality, right? So they feel a bit awkward about this. It's hard to understand this concept. You don't want to think about your parents being sexual creatures, let alone your step-parents being sexual creatures, right? They also have less involvement in the step family's life. And this is usually because by now they've sort of started establishing themselves. The locus of attention has moved from the parents when they're little to themselves when they're in adolescence. And now it's more towards friends and social and community, right? They prefer to separate from the family because they're busy creating their own identities, right? And again, they do not demonstrate emotions quite easily. A very important factor in determining responses to blended families is understanding the child's sex, right? So both boys and girls in relationships do tend to prefer verbal affection, such as praises or compliments, rather than physical closeness like hugs or kisses, right? Again, I'm not sure when this research was conducted, and it's been conducted a few times, right? We've seen that children prefer words of affirmation more than anything else, right? They love praise, they love compliments. Of course, there's a place for hugs and kisses and all of that, but within a blended family, verbal praise goes a lot further, right? Girls tend to be very uncomfortable with physical displays of affection from their stepfather, understandably so, right? Boys also accept their stepfather more quickly than girls do, right? I mean, the reason for this is all based in Freudian psych, which we will not get into today. But understanding these dynamics is quite important. So, Akona, are you with us? Okay, we cycle back. Shakir, are you with us?
Yes.
Okay, so with this understanding of the sex differences and how they process blended families, right? What advice would you give to a couple in which the mom has 2 daughters and the dad has 1 son? What advice would you give to the dad concerning his new relationship that he has to form with these 2 new girls that are going to become his stepdaughters?
Do not become touchy-feely with them. They will
Good
scream.
advice. Your whole life, yes.
Look for the good in the things that they do rather than criticize all the time. We're not saying don't form your routines and disciplines, but rather look for and praise, give them verbal affection and praises and compliments, and don't put them down, especially not in public, things like that.
Okay. Sophia, what advice would you give to that same dad?
So the dad has a son and he's marrying somebody with 2 daughters.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly that.
What advice would I give him?
Looking at how girls respond to new stepfathers.
Hmm. Yeah, but I think Shakir said that part already, not to be touchy-feely stuff
Mhm.
with them. Um,
That it's okay
I
if he feels they're hating because they struggle to accept new fathers easily.
um,
They
oh,
probably do hate him.
I don't know, hey.
Okay. Tell me about your blended family quickly, if you don't mind. Right? What are the genders
Uh-huh.
of your children?
So, Shakir had only 2 daughters when we got married. They are slightly older than my son. And I have a daughter that's 2 years younger than him. The challenges that we had back then was that they were going into their teenage years, and I had early childhood kids with me. So it was expected from me to be able um, to know how to deal with teenagers and all their moods and whatever. And yeah, so that's the thing that baffles me is that they had a lot of beef with me.
Mhm.
And the boy was okay with Shakir, I think, for the most part of it.
Mhm.
Uh I don't
That's
know.
exactly that, because boys do adjust easier to a stepfather than girls, right? Often you will find that aggression within the system, so emotion grows, emotion gets expressed as aggression when children are younger very often, and that
Mhm.
is usually directed at the primary carer, right? Their first base carer. So you see it a lot with children with disabilities, you see it a lot with young children also. So you as the mom would be in the firing line. You wouldn't have gotten anything at that stage, right? Because this is how they can express themselves at that stage. That does make sense.
Mm.
All right, Jackie, if you had to give advice to the mom in that situation, what advice would you give her understanding how children adjust?
I would encourage her to ensure that she spends one-on-one time with each of her girls and maintains very, very open communication with them. That she doesn't take it personally if they don't like the stepdad or if they have issues or they complain about him. I think coming into a space like that, they actually are the priority, not the stepfather. And I think that needs to be communicated. I think she needs to build a relationship with her stepson, but not at the detriment to her 2 daughters.
Okay.
I
And
think
what
she also needs
indicators
to
could she use for
communicate
that?
in terms of her relationship with her stepson.
Yes. So, like, how would she know it's becoming a problem with her daughters?
If she maintains open communication with her daughters, and they're able to communicate how they feel, and she's able to hear that openly without being defensive.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So we'll of course get more into it, but a very good understanding to have is that step families are potentially vulnerable, right? And that's purely just because divorce rates and separation rates are increasing, right? So now we have blended families that are mixing very often. You do get, like, I personally know a few people who have been married more than once. right? And each time they've taken their children through to the next one. So it does compound. However, right, we need to know when to refer to professional help, right? And families, especially if you're running a support group of some sort, need to know when to refer to professional help. And this is the guideline. Number one, if a child directs the anger at a particular family member or openly resents a step-parent or parent, right? This, number one, some of it is acceptable, right? We don't expect children to just like their step-parents or parents, but when the anger becomes the overwhelming theme, we need to look into a mediative process. We need to look into a therapeutic process to assist that child in directing that anger and to assist the family in understanding this child's anger and sort of processing through that energy. If one parent suffers from great stress, then it's usually helpful to find some professional help because that will feed back into a half of the family, right? And that can sort of throw the family off balance a little bit. If a step parent openly favors one child over the other, then professional help is definitely needed because that will cause long-term damage. And if there's no pleasure from enjoyable activities together anymore, right? Then usually we need to get to the core of what is blocking that enjoyment from flowing. Okay. Blended families do not bond instantly, but if everybody has a chance to get used to one another, they can then thrive. Okay, so this is the sort of foundation blocks for it, for our discussion on family preservation. So now, based on everything we've said, let's do some scenarios, right? Jackie, you are going to be, we're only going to do 2 5-minute activities, right? You're going to be the therapist. The social worker. You have been called in because Shakir and Sophia are about to bring their families together. They've asked you for a roadmap. One of their child is aged 4 and the other one is aged 12, right? They've asked you to help them with practical advice on how to navigate the next 3 months, right? Go. I want to hear you advise them. We're not going to go into breakaway rooms because it's literally only us here. So go.
Okay, does the 4-year-old belong to one and the 12-year-old belong to another?
Yes.
Boys and girls?
So the 4-year-old is a girl, the 12-year-old is a boy.
Okay. I would advise them differently on each one. So with the
Sophia Shakir,
4-year-old,
feel free to interrupt her and ask for specific advice.
Okay. I have the daughter.
so you have a daughter who is 4.
Yeah.
Ah, I see. So let me ask you a question then. Does this 4-year-old daughter, is she with you permanently or does she still see her first mom?
I have weekly visits.
And she has weekly visits with the first mom, but she doesn't stay with her.
No, she stays with the mom. I have weekly visits with her.
Oh, you have weekly visits. Does she like stay for weekends with you guys?
Yes.
Okay. So the first thing I would advise you with your 4-year-old is that you create a calendar with her, that she can see the times and the days when it's mom's time and when it's dad's time. So she's aware of, because for a 4-year-old to know time is very, very difficult and can be very challenging. If she goes, oh, you're going to see daddy now, you're going to see mom next week, it's very hard for her to conceptualize time. So I would have a calendar on the wall month by month so that she can tick off the days and understand it's so many sleeps until she sees dad, or it's only sleeps till she sees mom. For both children, I would together sit down and come up with rules for your family and decide what those rules are and have them up somewhere. For the 4-year-old, you'll need some kind of picture For the 12-year-old, it can obviously be written, but have it somewhere displayed so they understand that even though they come from different places, that the rules are the same for both of them and that it is fair. Shakira, I would say it's really important for you to spend time with your 4-year-old by just the two of you,
Oh,
as well as together as a
okay.
family. And
Rules,
Sophia, I would say it's very important for you to spend time with your son, your 12-year-old son.
So the
You also
rule,
need, yeah.
the confusing part of the rules is the 4-year-old and 12-year-old cannot have the same rules.
For sure.
For example, you cannot eat ice cream after sunset. That can be
Okay.
a common, right? However,
Yes.
bedtime for the
That sounds
12-year-old,
like a
bedtime
terrible rule. Sorry to interrupt, Percy.
in winter. Let's add in winter. So
Yes.
how do we adjust that, and how do we get them to understand that the rules cannot be the same for both of you?
So with the age difference, with regards to those kind of rules, I would have bedtimes for different ages. So 4-year-old, your bedtime is at 6:30. But when you are 12 years old, you'll be able to go to bed at 8:30 like your stepbrother.
Yeah, but you're favoring
So
him.
it's you're not favoring him. You're explaining that different ages go to bed at different times. And
Yeah,
smaller children
but
will
the
go,
mom's house, when she goes to bed at a different time. So what here now she must
Uh-huh.
have rules.
well, you would need to negotiate that with the mother and come up with a
Okay,
complete
let's
a
switch.
joint
Let's
understanding.
switch therapist chairs. Sophia, advise there. You've taken the social worker space.
No,
Yes, you step in. They're saying that
no.
there's a difference in the rule. What do you do? What advice would you give
I
them?
I do a parenting plan.
Parent effective training.
Give me a bit more. Give me a bit more.
Maybe I would make a chart that shows ages and sleeping time routine and explain to her next year you will sleep 15 minutes later and then later until you 12 years old and you can sleep the time that your stepbrother sleeps.
Yo, that sounds like ECD, and it's like how long am I gonna wait for 12 years?
No, that's the best I can do today, guys.
No, that's perfectly fine. Sometimes we'll just have to take that. We don't have a choice, do we? I joke. Okay, Shakir, you've been
Yes,
called to
sir.
be the social worker.
Oh, they're gonna roast me.
Yeah, understandably. Jackie has come to you and she has said that she is about to go into a blended family, and the person she's bringing along has a boy. Right? She's never raised a man child before, a boy, so she needs to know what should she keep in mind as this boy is age 16. What do you advise her practically to do to set the foundation and understand the changes that the child is going through?
Okay, so I would say firstly, don't smoke with him to look cool.
Okay, I like it.
And if he's smoking, then you need to tell his father.
You're not a fun parent. I don't like this. I need to make friends with him fast.
Yeah, well, I'm not your friend. I'm your parent, actually, step parent. And if you don't like it, then ask your father to get someone else.
What?
Sounds. Did we all just miss the left?
We're winning here. Love it.
Very important. What I've found is that the biological parent needs to step up. In most cases, I don't know, or lots of cases.
Can I
And
discipline him? Because I disagree with so much of what he does. Can I discipline him?
it depends what discipline means to you. If discipline means with flatbread roller, because we got disciplined that way, then that's not what discipline is for me. You need to take. I think there's got to be consultation with the biological parent at all times, and you may not agree with everything, but come to a point of agree to disagree.
Okay. All right, great. I can see we're going to work a lot within the family structures to understand them and advise them, and that's perfectly fine. It was a bit of a curveball question because you don't have all the information in front of you for each case, but it's a very good idea to understand what the challenges are at each step. All right, so at 17, you can't expect a man-child to be very interested in the family. You can't expect them to want to do all the activities of the family, forming their own identity. They're going to feel weird about your sexuality, right? So understanding those and the impact that has on the family unit would help your clients do better. Sophia was completely correct when she said it's a parenting plan. And that's the number one thing for blended families, right? Parenting plans aren't only for separated families. Parenting plans can be used very effectively with blended families to work out how do we do things, how do we set up rituals, and how do we set up traditions, and how do we make things work within the family unit. What is our new identity? All right, so you're right on track there. All right.
Can I ask a question?
Of course. So that's the time we have now is for 1 or 2 questions for the last 5 minutes, and then we're going to wrap up this class so Sophia can rest.
Cool. So what happens if you want to do a parenting plan and one of the parties is not interested in that, doesn't want to, or just is purposefully obtuse, like just fights it on every level, their way or the highway, just is not willing to, because generally speaking, in a divorce situation, there's not a whole lot of love going on between the couple. And
So-
how do you then manage that if you've
So
got
in a
someone
divorce
who's just
situation-
completely unwilling?
In a divorce situation, luckily because of the laws that go into divorce, a parenting plan is compulsory, right? Nobody has to agree to it, and it's enforced by law, right? So that saves a lot of that. If it is a blended family, not a divorce, but one partner doesn't want to plan, they sort of want to freestyle it, and the other partner wants to plan, you cannot do a parenting plan, right? Because it does require the buy-in from both partners in order to be effective. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
How would you advise the parent then who wants it?
Well, they need to go and have those discussions privately with their partner, and maybe their plan must be to deal with communication within the partnership first before the family, depending on how important it is to them. Yeah, that's the best advice, because it's a pointless endeavor to even start
Yeah.
with.
Okay.
Okay. Perfect. Any other questions? No?
Nope, we good.
Okay, great. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to wish you a very stunning evening. Thank you very much. This was a nice intro. Now we're going to start working more towards what family preservation services look like and how you as a social worker start influencing those services, what you can provide. All right, have a beautiful evening, and I'll see you guys again next week.
Thank you.
All right, bye. Bye, Sophia. Get rest.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Just bye.